Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait,
Bob Anthony.
I'm Alan Singer.
educator, historian, Dr. Alan Singer, a regular with Media Watch, resident expert. Glad to put things in perspective for us. And everything's breaking left and right. And we're doing this the Wednesday, February 26th, before our hopeful Monday air on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, being brought to you by the good graces of EBT Educational Productions, Zoom's technology, and whatever. So,
Eric, can I make a correction?
yeah.
I think everything is breaking wrong.
Did I quantify it? It's breaking badly and wrong. Yes, I
Breaking bad.
Yes.
And the show is called Media Watch, and we're watching the media as it's being totally attempted to be destroyed by this wannabe autocratic thing. Alan, you had the latest breaking news on this Wednesday before we go to air next week or this weekend, but the latest capitulation.
All right. Jeff Bezos, who is the mega billionaire owner of Amazon, also owns the Washington Post, which is traditionally one of the great newspapers of the United States. So Bezos announced that his newspaper's opinion section would only have opinions about personal liberties and free markets, essentially the libertarian agenda, and it would no longer publish opposing viewpoints on these topics.
Another bow down.
And then what he said was he said to his editorial page editor, he says, I suggested to him that if the answer wasn't hell yes, then it had to be hell no. So the editorial editor said, after reflection on how I can best move forward in the profession I love, I quit.
Yeah, cartoon. Didn't we have a cartoonist at the Washington Post who got canned because when the first wave of the push that's now full tilt started, the editorialists for the Washington Post did what they normally do, was come up with an editorial cartoon that pointed to what was going on and what would still be going on. I remember it was at least the back end of last year, Bob. If you got that handy, I think we should let folks know what the kinds of freedom and freedom of the press that used to exist at the Washington Post that has now been systematically stifled.
Right. If you remember back to when Jeff Bezos first acquired the Washington Post, he said at that time he would take a hands-off approach to running the newspaper, that the editors would maintain control and that he would just be the publisher, making sure that the operation was financially solvent and all of that kind of good stuff. But as Alan just mentioned, the David Shipley, the editor, the opinion page editor, just left because of this new Jeff Bezos rule about the opinion page. And if you remember, a few months ago, there was a cartoonist at the Washington Post who had attempted to run this particular cartoon, which is coming up in a second. And you can see all of the tech gurus, Musk, Bezos, that's Bezos, the one furthest to the left. And you can even see Disney represented by Mickey Mouse at the ground. She attempted to run this editorial cartoon. Bezos said, no, you're not running a cartoon that makes me look bad. And the cartoonist, which is usually free to run, editorial page cartoonists, they're allowed to express their opinion. He said no, overruled the paper's editor. She left. I'll pull up her name in a second, but yeah, this is another step in the decimation of the Washington Post from being that paper of record like the New York Times, like the LA Times. Well, both of those papers have their current problems, and just taking the core out of what we're used to out of these major papers.
Yeah.
Paul Krugman left the New York Times, where he was a long-term, twice a week editorial commentator, and he accused mainstream media, including the New York Times, of sane washing Donald Trump, making believe that the outrageous things he was saying were actually within the realm of not insane. He called it sane washing. So Bezos may just be the worst coward, but they are all backing off.
No, the LA Times basically threw in the towel when they decided they weren't going to endorse Kamala Harris, their home state senator, so that they could curry favor with the guy that eventually won the election, whose name I always have a hard time calling. But anyway,
yes, and it was the billionaire owner of the LA Times that sent down that directive, not to run an endorsement. And just to give her credit, that cartoonist was Ann Telnaes, Telnaes, who did that wonderful cartoon.
Yeah, and she had been at the Post for quite some time.
Yes, she was their anchor cartoonist.
You guys know the Byron poem Ozymandias?
Mm-hmm.
Byron writes this poem, Ozymandias, where he says, I'm walking through the desert and I saw the remnants of this statue that had been collapsed and destroyed by the winds of time. And he says, and on it, it said, I am Ozymandias, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. See me and tremble. And he said, nothing was left but the ruins.
Right.
And what's scary is that when Trump becomes ruins, the whole country may become ruins.
We are well on the way to becoming ruined, but the press corps itself, the free press, is definitely under assault. We've got a number of stories we need to touch base on about. You guys want to kick it off with the DC press corps, because that was yesterday's breaking news about the president announcing that the Washington press corps, which since 1912 or 1913, maybe 1914, as independent journalists, had come together and decided who would become the press corps pool. When the president traveled, you had to have a smaller group of press with him. They couldn't have the full media. And so they would select among the free journalists who would go in that pool, cover the stuff, and disseminate it to the rest of the media so the rest of the country would find out what went down. The press did that selection. Bob, you want to talk about, do you have her name and stuff queued up, this press?
Sure. No need to show her photo, but her press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, announced yesterday that the Trump administration was going to give the selection of the press corps that travels with the president back to the people. That's how she put it. We're giving the selection of the press corps back to the people, which is obviously not what's happening. It's the Trump administration that's going to select the press corps that travels with the president. Now, of course, we have thousands of news outlets and whatnot. And so when you have a press pool, just for those who don't know, even though it's a selection of reporters, they share everything that they report with the other papers. And, by selection, and that's the rule. You have to share what you get, because everybody can't be in that little plane or that little room. The Washington Correspondents Association, I'm probably getting that name wrong, has made that selection, and it's a rotating selection for 100 years plus. And so she's saying, 27-year-old Caroline Leavitt is saying that she knows better than 100 years of practice and 100 years plus of journalistic integrity. She knows better how to handle this than the journalists through the ages. This is taking power not to the people; it's away from the press and into the White House. Big, big, big danger here, Eric and Alan.
Didn't they also ban the AP, Bob? What happened with that?
Yes, and if you remember, Trump made that executive order changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico. Hey, I said it, Mr. Trump. The Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And AP, in their style book, and I use their style book, I'm a copy editor. In their style book, it says now it still says Gulf of Mexico, but it notes that the United States of America has changed the name to Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. They make that notation, but Trump is angry that they don't flat out use it all the time. So for that reason, that stupid reason, the AP has lost its credential to attend White House press briefings. And
Now-
here again, for those who don't know, the Associated Press is association of thousands of news outlets. And here again, a handful of reporters report to thousands of news outlets. So you're not just losing the AP, you're losing thousands of news outlets by not letting them into the press room.
They also did the same thing at the Pentagon. New York Times, NBC News, National Public Radio, and Politico lost their offices at the Pentagon, and they were replaced by Trump-friendly, marginal, I think is a charitable term.
It's a charitable term. Yes, it is.
Look, New York Post, Breitbart News, One America News. These are just propaganda outlets for Trump.
Yeah.
And they are now the ones with the offices at the Pentagon with direct access. This is
So the head of the White House Press Corps Association, Eugene McDaniel, basically said in his response statement to the fact that this is an assault on the free press. And in dictatorial countries, it's the government who decides what news goes out to the people. And so our 350-year free press is now being challenged by this White House because the White House is now determining who gets to cover the White House. That's basically what the fascist regime in Italy did under Mussolini. That's what the Nazis did in Germany under Nazi stuff. Government propaganda outlets, which basically is what Fox fake news is, which is what OAN is, basically MAGA propaganda outlets. That's who he wants to give seats to at the Pentagon. And Eugene McDaniel called out his banning of the AP, called it out for what it is. This is part of what historically you always talk about, Alan. When dictators want to take over a country, they grab the press, they get control of the media, and they make the media say what they want the media to say. They give the media what messages they want that media to put out so that they can keep their population uninformed and brainwashed. And give us something else, not to give us, let's just continue the litany. Joy Reid just got fired. Dig into the Joy Reid firing by MSNBC, which normally is not Trump compliant, but seems to be wavering and waffling. And so let's deal with the Joy Reid story. Excuse me.
I've always liked Joy Reid. She's got a sense of humor and a sarcastic sense of humor. And she's fun. And too many of these talking heads end up being professorial lecturers. Well, she was removed. Rachel Maddow in that night went ballistic against MSNBC. How dare they get rid of Joy? And then what happened as part of this is Megyn Kelly, who was once fired by NBC.
Jumped on her firing just to gloat. Go ahead.
Was gloating. And then Don Lemon, she said, good riddance to the worst person on television. And then Don Lemon said in response, no, Megyn, the worst person on television fired by NBC was you. But this is sad. I don't see anybody like Joy Reid. And she was also one of the few African-American lead anchors.
Bob, talk about Rachel Maddow's dressing down MSNBC, not just for Joy, but in total. For all the people that they had canned who were people of color, including the Hispanic lady on the weekend. Do you remember that whole diatribe? It wasn't a diatribe, it was a dressing down.
I mean, I heard the snippet the other day, well, on video, and she said, she was angry, and she said it disappointed her that the only two non-white anchors were
In
off
prime
the air.
time.
Yeah,
In prime time.
in prime time, were gone. And she made a point of that on her own network, basically talking back to her own executives, which is a little, all power to her. She has the ability to do that. Not that many anchors do. And that's a very good point. I mean, we're just losing that. It's almost dangerous to say it, diversity in these times. We're losing that diversity on the news outlets, and we need it at this time.
Yes. People have been reading Project 2025 to understand the Trump agenda. And I think I realized we're reading the wrong text. We should be reading George Orwell's 1949 dystopian novel, 1984, where Big Brother's control of the public perception of reality, its complete control, comes to complete control of the media, which allows Big Brother, AKA Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Donald Trump, to extinguish once and for all the possibility of independent thought. That's the agenda of the Trump-Musk machine.
Somebody posted an old quote from Khrushchev, the old leader of the Soviet Union, back when it was still the Soviet Union. And he said that we will defeat America without firing one shot. We'll destroy them from within. And that's basically what's happening to us. We're being destroyed from within. Any kind of pushback is being silenced. The diversity of opinion isn't there. Eric, I remember when Howard Safir was the police chief in New York, and he had a press conference, and he threw out one particular news reporter. And my friend, who later ended up working for Con Ed as a PR guy, said he was aghast that when that happened, every single reporter in that room didn't walk out. Yep. That's the kind of movement we need right now. If the Trump administration wants to pick the press should say no. Nobody will show up. That's the kind of pushback we need at this moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, Bob.
That's a correct assessment. It's pretty much like when Musk and his Doge people told people, if you don't respond to this email, your lack of response means you're resigned and therefore you'll be fired. and half the federal government said don't respond, or at least a few of the, and then the other half said, yeah, you respond or else. And so the people had mixed messages, but the bottom line is this is one of these Orwellian, if you don't respond, you're telling us you don't want this job and you got no due process, you got nothing to back you up, and don't bother coming to work. On all these issues, I think the press corps and the individuals, organizations, whomever, are basically going to have to do what everybody has done since this MAGA attempted blitz to take over the control of the government and destroy the government, which is what they're doing. Everybody files lawsuits and say, this is against the Constitution, this is illegal, you're violating, whether it's the Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Second Amendment, First Amendment. We know all this journalistic stuff and a bunch of other things are violations of the First Amendment, violations of free speech rights and the free press. And one of the reasons why the founding fathers wanted a free press is because the British government would leaning on those colonists anytime they said anything bad about the king. So they could get thrown in jail, they could do all kinds. And so when they set their document, they didn't have those provisions. So they said, oh, we need a Bill of Rights. And those are your first 10 amendments. People forget that the first 10 amendments are what's called the Bill of Rights for the American people. And endemic and entrenched as that is free speech, freedom of assembly, and a free press. It is guaranteed. So when they do stuff like that, we need to take them to court and say, you are violating this part of the Constitution. You can't do that. And it's going to take time to wind its way through the courts. But you know what? Hitler had a blitzkrieg that made it look like he was going to take over the world. And the blitzkrieg maybe lasted a year or less. And his success lasted about a year and a half. And guess what? All we say about Adolf Hitler now is he was a pariah and he got destroyed. And maybe he took his own life. I say maybe. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
The 1,000-year Reich lasted 12 years.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
is dawn after the night. The First Amendment was a direct rebuke to British sedition and libel laws that dated back to colonial era, because they outlawed criticism of the monarchy or the government. Now, Trump, who recently crowned himself king in a Truth Social post, does not believe he's restricted by the constitutional mandate.
Right.
And he's launched an all-out war to silence the media. And it is reminiscent of similar campaigns in Germany under Adolf Hitler and the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. I mean, well, again, his heroes are Putin and
Some of these quotes, I believe, are from your blog. If you got more pertinent stuff from that blog, please share it with our viewers. I don't know how much time we have, but we've got enough time to share more.
well, the other one that's very scary is Brendan Carr, who is going to be the head of the Federal Communications Commission.
FCC guy.
Yeah, he's launching investigations into NPR, PBS for liberal bias, against Comcast for promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's threatening to investigate MSNBC and NBC for distorted election coverage. He reopened a probe of CBS, claiming they distorted the presidential debate between Trump and Harris. And he's actually demanded that CBS loses broadcasting license. Yeah. Now, Paramount, which owns CBS, is going to settle because it's cheaper to settle than to go to court. And ABC has already agreed to pay Trump $15 million.
Cheaper to settle than to go to court. Yes, we understand exactly, but this is bowing down and this is kowtowing to pressure from a wannabe autocrat. And part of that Paramount Plus deal is because they're trying to do some kind of merger, divestiture, and they're hoping the FCC guy won't put a kibosh on that. And so that's why they're going to settle that suit to curry favor with the megalomaniac in the White House. So basically, this country right now is doing an all-out push. But the people that are running this country right now, including the acquiescent Republican House and Senate members, are trying to rush this country into a white supremacist, autocratic Christian nation at the expense of everybody and everything else in this country. They are, and you're saying Project 2025 is the blue book that they have put down, the blueprint that they have put down to make this happen. And this whole white supremacist stuff didn't start with Donald Trump and the MAGA people. You can take it back historically, Alan. You can go back to Woodrow Wilson, the most racist president before this one. May still be the most racist president, but it's a toss-up as far as I'm concerned right now. Woodrow Wilson, when he came into office, you're the historian, Alan, go to it.
Well, Wilson is elected in 1912. He takes office in 1913. And one of his first acts was to mandate that federal workforce be segregated by race. Now, this is 1913. And this executive order actually remains in effect till 1948. When Harry Truman issued Executive Order 9981, which said there had to be equal treatment and opportunity for all persons. Now, it's noted because that's what desegregated the military, but it also desegregated the federal government. But that was an executive order. It was not until the 1964 Civil Rights Act, signed by Lyndon Johnson, that segregation in the federal civil service actually became illegal. So from 1913 to 1964, over 50 years, the segregation was actually remained the law of the land.
And that's the danger that I feel. We have about 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. That's the danger that I feel right now. is that the damage that's being done will take a long time to unwind. I mean, we're going to have to go through courts, and the Supreme Court is in Trump's pocket. A lot of the federal judges have proven not to be quite as good readers of the Constitution as I would think they'd be. So yeah, it might take we're in a long run here to unwind, and we're only 1 month into this damn administration. It's going to take a long time to unwind this this mess, as we have about 2 minutes left.
He just ended his first month because he was inaugurated on the 21st, and this is like February 26th. So we're a couple of days into his second month. But you know what? The plan for this stuff was drawn up while he was out of office. The 2025 people came together right after he got voted out and decided they were going to draw up this plan. And so they drew it up. And every time people said, don't reelect this guy, this is his blueprint, he went, I don't know anything about that. I don't know those people. And he stood there and lied, just like he always lies. If his lips are moving, he's lying. Okay? I don't know which comedian said that, but take that to the bank. If Donald Trump's lips are moving, he is lying. If Elon Musk's lips are moving, he is lying. Like, oh, I don't know who's running this, and no, we don't have access to this, et cetera, et cetera. No, he don't lie as much as Donald Trump lies because he thinks he's a white supremacist South African king. Did you see that video with the supposed king kissing the toes of the actual king? Anybody see that video?
Yes, obviously it's an AI fake video, but yes.
Yeah, fake video.
Yeah, I'm glad you corrected me on AI fake video. That's an AI fake that's actually the real thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, I think we're about out of time, aren't we?
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. Look. I'm sorry Joy Reid is gone. I don't know what the pushback was. I know Richard Prince sent a thing about folks rallying around Joy Reid, and there was a push to turn off MSNBC after Joy's last show to let them know. Don't know how that turned out. But you know what? If people don't get to the streets and people don't be as active as we're suggesting they should be, these people are going to win in the near term, which is what Hitler did. He won in the near term. He lost in the long term, but look at all the damage he did, and look at all the damage Woodrow Wilson did. And so we can't afford that kind of damage. I'm Eric Tait. This has been Media Watch.
I'm Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube and pretty soon Blue Sky at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.